I sense from the questions that you asked me that you're having problems with differentiating between, it isn't a case of taking a big chance, it's a matter of giving yourself a big chance. That's natural, that's normal. Doesn't make it right. And it's because you're afraid. That's natural, that's normal. Doesn't make it right, but it makes it a reality, because your perception is your reality. If your perception is, I'm going to lose my ass and everything that I work for, blah, 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 first of all, chances are you will. And that's all about comfort, self-esteem, self-concept, feeling good about yourself. And as Stephen Sussman, in my judgment, one of the finest lawyers in America, told me, he said, Dan, what you do best is you help coach and teach people to lose or forget the fear of failure. I don't know how to lose in court anymore. I might have had the feeling 20 years ago, even though I've never lost in America, but I sure as hell don't have it anymore. Whether it's IBM, American Telephone and Telegraph, or John Jones. When you don't honor a contract with me, you better come prepared for war, because I know how to wage it. It's called scorch the earth. Every bit of my fiber, my being, every nickel in my net worth is on your back like stink on a skunk. Suing you in 50 states, 20 countries, simultaneously, giving you writs, injunctions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's the same passion I have about business. But it's not taking a big chance, it's giving yourself a big chance, and it's getting comfortable. And the way you get comfortable with it, ladies and gentlemen, is to do it. And continue to do it, and do it. And when you fall, when you ride a bike, you fall down. You have trainer wheels, or they used to. I don't know if they still have trainer wheels anyway. And you fell off it. And you got back up, and you fell off it. You get thrown from a horse. You get back on it. Business transactions no different. Building a business is no different. If you knew that you could break your neck learning to ride a bike when you're 5 years old, you probably wouldn't have got on the bike. That's why there's trainer wheels. You learn this by doing. You don't learn it by reading. You don't learn it by listening to tapes or looking at audios. You learn it by doing it. When was the last person that learned to play football in a book? Who's the last person you learned to play baseball, hockey, run sprints, ice skate in a book, play golf in a book, on tapes, on video? Nobody in this room can raise their hand because they don't know anybody. Because there's sometime you got to put the pedal to the metal and get off your dead derriere and go out and do it. You can read books from now till you're 1,000 years old. And it doesn't mean spit. Those guys that wrote the books, assuming they really did it, are the guys that benefited by putting it down. I benefited more by writing this than you from reading it. If it was easy, ladies and gentlemen, everybody'd do it. It ain't easy, but it's not impossible. The people we call gifted are different from the crowd in one very special way. They accepted their gifts. We all have gifts that haven't been accepted. They let it happen. The high achievers, the persons you admire, are those individuals who open their gifts. These winners have more gifts because they claimed them, took them out of the wrapping, and used them. I'm not a genius. I'm not in Mensa. I didn't go to a great school. I did graduate on the dean's list. I did take 26 semester units to get through 4 years of school in 2.5. This is after I got out of the service. But I worked hard, and I stuck to what I set out for myself. And I tried over, and I fell off that bike so many times. 20,000 times I've fallen off the bike. All these guys have fallen off that horse and off that bike more times than you can ever imagine, and they continue to open their gifts. It's just like when I heard Ted Turner say, Dan, set goals that you can't accomplish in your lifetime. It was like, remember the old Ford Motor Company commercial, the light bulb that went off? It was like a light bulb that went off in my head. I was 47 years old. I'd been pretty damn successful myself. I'm no slouch. But it changed my life. If I can change my life at 47, having done what I've done, God Almighty, where should you be? Your doubts are not the product of accurate thinking, but habitual thinking. You've thought for those 200,000, 400,000, whatever the hours that you've been around, that you've gotten all that preconditioned crap thinking, garbage in, garbage out. It's habitual thinking. It's not accurate. Just because you haven't experienced doesn't mean it's not possible. Now, I want you to get ruthless about trying something different, about making that 180-degree turn and moving out and doing something different with your life, your business life. Obviously, what I've talked about has applications in other than business. I'm sure that everybody in this room is smart enough, even though we've only got 100 IQ, all of us together, to understand that there are applications from everything from raising children to you name it. I have been more successful with my applications in the business world. I have been less successful with applications for my children. If my 3 children, my 2 sons and my daughter were here, they would be first to tell you. I've been more successful with my wife than my children. But I've been working on her for almost 25 years. I've only been working on my kids 8, 11, and 13 years, respectively. And my 13-year-old is, as they say in the 90s, is a big challenge. Dan Jr., he's as smart now, he's almost 13. He's as smart now at almost 13 than I was when I was 18 or 20. He's lived it. He understands how to work the crowd. And he's only 12. He understands. He's smart. Super smart. At the private school he went to in Houston, they said he was the smartest, most articulate, and most well-organized student ever to come through that school. They shouldn't have ever told him that. Because he went from straight A's, no, that's the other son. Straight A's and valedictorian. He was on CBS during the Gulf War and made a speech. He read a poem on Dan Rather's program on peace. To Doofus. He's the #1 Doofus at his school now. He's a folk hero since he told the principal to go F herself and left campus and got arrested. He's a folk hero. He's also one of the toughest kids in school, and he's only in the 7th grade, you know. And, yeah, he's a challenge. And he just, Zach, like you at lunch. Yep. Well, aren't you going to answer me? Yep. Nope. What do you want to say? Nothing. Can't wait to leave. Can't wait to leave. Just, if I talk to Dad, he's going to keep me here another half an hour. If I just shut up, maybe he'll let me go. But I want you to get ruthless. And that doesn't mean you're doing something bad, because sometimes ruthless has bad connotations. I want you to get tough. I want you to go out there and do the things that you're capable of. And as Joe Batten said, be all you can be. To scale the mountain of success, you need an experienced guide. If you haven't figured out who that is, I don't know. I don't know if I can make that printing any bigger.
I was going to ask you, is it on the right-hand side or is it on the
Yeah, I am that person. And even though there are a few exceptions, most of the people that you've heard over the years have been giving, not all, some are good. And I don't want to make you think that the whole industry is wrought with fraud, but a lot of it is. But I know that you have never talked to anybody that's as experienced in business as I am in a seminar, forum, workshop kind of thing like this. I know that for a fact. And I don't think you've ever heard anybody that enjoys what he does as much as I do, because I really do enjoy this. But I think you're right. I like the 8-hour ones are easier compared to the 18-hour ones, Ed. You know, 8 hours you can do standing on your head. These 18 hours, I used to give these 18-hour deals that would go 20 hours, 22 hours in a row, and I'd be a tired puppy. I mean, when I got done with those deals. And then I used to give them 2 or 3 times a week. And I mean, and then I'd come home and my kids would say, let's go to the show, Dad. Let's go. I need to sleep. I need to sleep. Now, Nemo, Potest, Extreme, Patrium. Now, I used to not have the English underneath, but I hardly ever found anybody that knew enough Latin to figure out what that said. But perhaps I can work for your dream. I certainly hope so. Now, we're going to open it up to questions, revelations. This is not atypical. Very few people ask questions during the seminar. It just works out that way. I have a feeling it has to do with comfort. I used to give a speech about this time about talking about there's no such thing as a stupid question. You know how they used to tell you that in school? That's crap. That's crap. But if you're ever going to ask a dumb question, as they say, now's the time to ask it. Yes, sir. Oh, could we? I want these on the mic. Could we give the gentleman a mic, please?
Thank you. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I came all the way from Hamburg, Germany, seeking for help. Now I need help.
Okay, I'm listening.
I believe I've made some of the most important discoveries in human history. Not one, not two, but several. One of these discoveries, for instance, is the establishment of the fact that there is a genetic connection between the African languages and the Indo-European languages. This is against all theories.
I like that so far. I like that.
And the consequences are extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
They are as extraordinary as the consequences of Darwin's theory or Einstein and so on. And there are several such things I have discovered. Now my problem is that when I mentioned it at the university, the professor said they wouldn't like to talk to me. I was stopped from attending lectures.
That doesn't surprise me.
So that I have been working on this privately for a long time, and so I have nobody to communicate with. And my idea was to issue a newsletter where I can communicate these things to people, for them to take a stand. Whether I'm dreaming or I'm mad, I'm prepared to face anybody, anywhere, to prove my stand. But nobody as yet has been able to, is prepared. In Germany, at any rate, they are not prepared to face me. So that, but the point is that it seems to me maybe it's difficult to communicate such a thing in through newsletter. Yeah, but I don't have the money to sit down a year or so to write a book But even if then, how do I get the right people? The consequences are great for this work. It's as great as, well, one of the greatest, in fact. For instance, I have, through these researches, proofs that the theories they talk about Atlantis and such things may not be dreams. There may be some substance there, but we have to examine all these.
Well, let me answer. By the way, I don't believe Atlantis is dreams either. But the quickest way to get something like that, that's like if you developed, let's just say, for example, cure for AIDS, or let's just say you can prove the world's still flat, or let's just say, I mean, something that's extraordinary, geometric in nature. In my judgment, you've got to befriend somebody in the media, preferably somebody that's credible, And the Financial Times science editor in London, which I can't think of his name right now, but if you call my office in Houston, we can find out for you. And because the science editor of the Financial Times in London is one of the most credible science writers in the world today, it would be like getting Scientific American or some magazine like that of that stature, and to sit down and you have to start at the top. For some project like this, sometimes you have to go right to the top. You've got to forget all the in-between steps. And this is that type of project. Otherwise, you'll be the rest of your life. You'll be 40 more years doing this, and you will have not dented the market. But you have to interest some person of the media. The other approach would be like when Mr. Rockefeller funded the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 50s. He put up all that money, and then when he died in 70s or late 70s, he stopped funding it. Get somebody like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Getty Foundation, the Ford Foundation, or the Bass Foundation, Sid and Perry Bass in Fort Worth, Texas, because they fund these kinds of projects all the time, and they're looking for something that's going to change the way humanity is. And there are people, but you're going to have to kiss frogs. I mean, you're going to have to go to many of these institutions or contact many of these institutions, and you already know this. Most of them won't believe you. Most of them think you're crazy, you're on drugs or something. But you're going to have to persevere and talk to a lot of those people. But if you can get somebody friendly in the media, like a 60 Minutes or who's 60? Mike Wallace, that's the guy, Mike Wallace, or somebody like that. The other idea I have is you go to Oprah Winfrey. Oprah. Now, this is her kind of project. You go to Oprah, and I mean, and you go to her. One, she's an African American, for starters. Two, she's got more money than God. Three, she's into this kind of project, because you don't want to go to somebody. Don't go to places where you can't make a change. You don't want to. You don't want to waste a lot of time. So she has a track record extraordinaire for doing this. She just announced in the last few weeks she's donating a bunch of millions of her dollars to try to help break the chain, the cycle of poverty in the inner cities, in the ghettos. This, I believe, would be just nothing's a slam dunk in life. I mean, easy. But she is the kind of person that could help you. I don't know, Oprah's in Chicago. Is that where she is? Yeah. And I may even know somebody that's close to her. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. But I probably, given me a few days, could find somebody that could make an introduction. Yes, sir?
Tony Brown, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, microphone to him.
You should get a hold of Tony Brown in New York. He has a talk show on PBS TV and radio. He's an African-American journalist, ex-Howard University. He's dynamite. And he will pick you up in a heartbeat. No question. This is Tony Brown.
And when this all comes to fruition and you're successful, just make sure on national television you got the idea at Dan Peña's Quantum Leap. You can do that seminar.
Just call information, area code 212 for New York City, and you'll get the number. I got it.
Okay, question up here. Or we'll work our way up to there.
Hi, thank you. I love your idea that you're right on. You're exactly what America needs, or the world, actually.
I agree with that, by the way. Thank you.
But even more importantly, I think, is you're what American school system needs. And my personal goal is to overthrow the American school system by year 2000.
I like that, too. Yeah.
So my question is, what would your suggestion be on how to get? I mean, if you were to try to eradicate the doofuses from the public administration in the school system,
Big project.
how would you do? How would you start?
Again, media. I mean, George Nader. Is that the guy Nader? Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader. Why do I always say George? Was he an actor? Anyway. Okay. No. Nader. Get someone like that. See, Nader has been doing this public safety, public awareness thing for 25, 30 years now, I guess. And but somebody of that stature, because enough studies have been written from various famous universities that say that our educational system's going down the toilet. I read one a few years ago that said the high school education, the educational system peaked out in 1963 and has been deteriorating every year since 1963. Now, coincidentally, I graduated from high school in 1963. Some people say high school education in '63 was like, a college education or an associate of arts education now. And to get somebody like that, of that stature, or get somebody like when Mrs. Bush was in the White House, she was big on education. I don't know what Mrs. Clinton is big education. All she seems to be is screaming about health care, which is very important. I'm not trying to downplay that. But get somebody of that stature involved. And again, these names that I use, the Bass family, the Ford Foundation, they do things like that. And I would pick a test market, a market that you know that if you crack, when you crack it, it will have national exposure. And then I'd go after getting whoever voted out of office, but a test market. And now don't make it such, in this particular case, you don't want to pick Los Angeles School District. I mean, you want to pick like Long Beach School District or the smaller one. So also look, see when they're up for a vote, so how vulnerable they are. And when they, because a lot of these are elected officials, and I do it that way. And the media, especially, there's a lot of muckrakers in the media now. That's all there is in my judgment. I mean, you shouldn't have too much difficulty. And I'd go back and I'd see what studies have been done, what programming has been done on 60 Minutes or Hard Copy or all these types of programs about the educational system. And there may have already been a city that's been earmarked in Mississippi or...
Baltimore has turned their education system over to business, and just last week, I think it's Cincinnati that has started the same thing.
Yeah, and it's not a new idea. It's a great idea, but I mean, I know, I think Baltimore has been working on this 15 years or so, a long time. That's how I would start. Mike to this gentleman, and then work it up to the lady in the corner.
This is one of my greatest aspirations as well. There's something, a movement called accelerated learning out there right now. The book has been written, I guess it was $1 million grant that was given to Gordon Dryden and Jeanette Voss, Learning Revolution. And on the cover it says how to learn 5 to 10 times quicker. Where are we? And this was written a couple of years ago. I really can't understand it for the life of me. I agree with you totally.
This lady up in the corner.
Yeah, I just have a question in reference to your Doofus Test for employees, and I wish that you could expound on it a little.
Okay, could you speak up a little? Okay, the Doofus Test. It's one of my favorite things, as you can probably imagine. Given that none of our organizations are wrought with 100% of the kind of people that we'd like our organizations to be, that's life. It will never be 100%. But what you want is at least a majority. And if you don't have a majority, if not all, or nearly all, your high-profile people that you work with, high-performance people, then there's not much chance of many of the things that we've discussed today coming to fruition. So what I like to do is when I'm going to hire a professional or I'm going to hire an employee directly, I want to put him under the strain and simulate, like a simulator. A pilot goes into a simulator to simulate hard times. Because I don't want to see he or she how they react when everything's rosy. Almost anybody can manage when everything's rosy. Even a doofus can manage when everything's rosy. I want to see he or she when it's tough, when you got to suck up your pantyhose. Suck up your pantyhose time. So I will tell people to meet me in Chicago, knowing that they planned a trip with their family over Easter vacation in Florida. I will tell people that I want to meet them at 10:30 at night after I already have my meetings for the day on Friday night, knowing that they're going to go to Hawaii with their family the Saturday. I want to put them in a strain because I want to see how they react. Because business is not static, and we shouldn't manage it as if it were static. Most management, most interviewing process goes through, oh, you bring in him and their wife or a significant other, you put them up at a nice hotel, you have your first meeting about 11 o'clock, you go to lunch. That's not life. That's in the movies. That's not how you run a business. You're putting out fires, you're doing things, you're reacting, you're being proactive, and you want to see this person under that kind of strain. And they're going to react well or they're not. Depending on how poorly they react, measured against how much pressure you put them under, yeah, I ask tough questions. You know, I ask questions you're not supposed to ask anymore in the 90s. Quite frankly, I don't care. Arm & Hammer used to make people take lie detector tests. You couldn't do that. It was illegal. Armin didn't know it. Because they're going to be part of my family. Because when I take people in, they're part of my family. I live, die, and breathe for them. You're going to be part of my family. You're going to be straight. You're not going to have green hair. You're not going to be too funky. And you're going to dress like a business person. And I put people in strains. I also like to travel with people before I hire them. I want to see what they look like when they travel. That's where most people fail the Doofus test. Yep. Because the real you comes out when you travel. Just think about what you wear when you travel, ladies and gentlemen. Just think about it. And you've used the excuse, well, I'm kicking back, you know, I'm going to relax. I've met a lot of important people on business trips that I didn't know I was going to meet. Now, if I'm sitting next to you dressed like this, and Doofus over here is sitting there wearing his running shorts and Adidas shoes and his warm-up suit or whatever the hell he wears, and Mrs. Doofus is wearing a sundress. My wife travels. She looks like she just, this is just one man's opinion, and I know it works. When my wife travels, she travels with her Louis Vuitton bags from here stretched out from here to the door, and those guys that are carrying them, and wearing one of her, does Chanel make clothes? Chanel. Isn't Chanel perfume too? But they make clothes, right? Are they expensive? Okay, her Chanel very undoofus suit, or you know. So, and that's the way I don't think Henry Kissinger ever traveled in a pair of jeans. I don't know that for a fact. I've seen him on planes. I've sat next, and he was always wearing a suit. Henry doesn't even unbutton his suit thing. He keeps it buttoned. It's not for everybody. I mean, it's not. Around my house, my favorite clothes are boxer shorts and a T-shirt that says some vulgarity across the front. That's my house. Now, I have a lot of meetings at my house, and sometimes I show up to those meetings at my house that way. When the Magnificent Seven came over, what was I wearing? I don't remember. I wasn't wearing boxer shorts. What was I wearing? Slacks and a shirt. Okay. Yeah. But that's the Doofus test. And believe me, if they crack under that, you can bet your backside that they're going to crack under pressure. Absolutely. And everybody has their different form of Doofus test. And I tell people, I said, you flunked the Doofus test. Huh? I mean, microphone. Oh, who has the mic? Right here in front. Let's stay here since we're here. Right here. One of the Magnificent Seven.
In a hypothetical situation, what exact qualities or attributes besides good track record or lack of criminal record do you look for when, say, 6 guys approach you on a deal that sounds too good to be true?
It probably is if it's coming from your group.
And only out of the 6 guys, you only know one real well.
Does this sound familiar, or am I having déjà vu? Yeah, repeat the question. Okay, first of all, tell them who you are, what you do. Tell them a little bit about your background, why you're in the Magnificent Seven. Stand up, yeah.
My name is Raul Bettis. I grew up in the San Joaquin Valley, the youngest son of farm workers. Went to Harvard College and Harvard Law School. My college roommate and best friend was Fidel Vargas, who was elected mayor at age 23. He was on Newsweek, received a lot of publicity. I had the good fortune of sitting next to Dan Pena at a fundraiser, and Fidel Vargas is now pretty much a top. He's a middle of Dan Pena, so we're just going to start calling him. And he gave us the opportunity to meet Dan at Peña at his home, and we got 6 hours of the more X-rated version.
Graphic.
I guess, some of the elements of his presentation. And to repeat my questions, basically, Dan Pena had made earlier reference that upon first impression, he makes a decision about whether or not to enter into business with a particular individual or group of people based on certain
Criteria. Okay.
And I just want to know.
Okay,
exactly
sure.
what you're talking about.
Okay. I'm going to use your group for an example. Okay. Now, I've had a lot of what I call these kids. They're young men. They were 26 to 30, basically, in age. And they came looking like businessmen. I mean, with one exception, they came looking like businessmen. And they look like little Wall Street clones, basically, They all looked alike. And they all pretty much dressed alike. And, most of them had braces on and suspenders for Americans. And I would expect that, because this group, with one exception, are what I call the Harvard Magnificent Seven. There's another one sitting in the back room back there that's being very quiet right now, hoping that maybe I'll forget he's sitting back there. He just slid down to the seat. And but I mean, so I would be surprised and I would be suspect if they didn't come looking like that, because some of these guys are lawyers, investment bankers. I mean, they have jobs. There was except for the one radio broadcaster, Doofus Navarrete Rubin. I mean, who's got a program on what?
20-something talk show.
The talk radio. And for the entrepreneur that's sitting there in the white shirt today, I mean, everybody else came looking like Wall Street clones. The radio guy who looks like a fat Larry King, basically, a fat, Hispanic Larry King, with 2 days growth beard, and a little pot belly, But so if they had not come dressed like that, I would be suspect, okay, because we're coming to talk business, and I'm a businessman, and I've been introduced. Secondly, the kinds of questions they asked, I measure the kinds of questions they asked me. And for the most part, with 1 or 2 exceptions, they asked intelligent, they sounded sincere, and see, all they had to do is sound sincere. It doesn't make a difference whether they were. They may have left there and all laughed and said, that big tub of shit, we're never going to listen to him. You know? But perception is reality. My perception is they listened. And then I gave them a bunch of stuff to read and listen to. And then some of them followed up right away. Well, there's 3 of them here today. And Reuben was the first one to call. He followed up. So when I'm talking to somebody, how quick they follow up. How quick they get me back information. How quickly do they perform. Now, when I met Fidel, the young mayor, his performance record was like he's batted 0. I mean, he took, you know, because politicians, even though he's been held accountable and he's done a very good job and he's been written up nationally about it, I mean, his ability to follow up was next to 0. I mean, if it didn't mean a vote, he wasn't interested in following up, and I wasn't in his district. So now he's changed. Now he's Mr. Follow-Up. When I had an emergency with one of my companies, I needed something done. My assistant called Fidel, and I don't know how he did it, but he got it done for me. It was something that had to be done with my manufacturing company. He got it done. So, I mean, that's what I look at. And when like the Mosbys, who are the 2 young Aryan race, you know, kids from Missouri that I turned over another company to run, these guys, you know, they came dressed like businessmen, and their ability to follow up. I also look at their ability to communicate. People that work with me, you know, I want them to be able to communicate, because the 90s is all about communication. And they don't have to be able to get up on a podium like this and be able to speak like I do, but they've got to be able to communicate. And I like to look at the written word. I like to see how they write. Most people that get out of school now can't write worth sour anything. I mean, they just can't write. And so those are some of the things on the young end. Now, on the older end of the continuum, what I look for is their ability, not necessarily to have hit home runs, because normally they come to me and I teach them how to do that. But perseverance, a track record mostly of stick-to-itiveness, and that I like disciplined backgrounds normally. I like military backgrounds a great deal. And if I have a choice between 2 fellas, a Harvard guy or an Annapolis guy, there's no choice. Throw the Harvard guy in the trash can. I mean, I'll take an Annapolis or an Academy guy anytime, anywhere, any place. Because, I mean, they understand that discipline has a great deal to do with success. And although one of the Magnificent Seven had been at West Point, didn't like West Point, and but I like military guys normally. There's been a few that I haven't, but so those are some of the things that I look for. And everybody, the guy that really loves military guys is Ross Perot. Of course, he went to Annapolis. I mean, his organization is wrought with those guys. I mean, it's like, when we're invading Grenada, everybody was at the TVs there, wishing that they were there, getting trigger time. See, that's not what they tell you. You know, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Trigger time. You know what trigger time is? Yeah, you know what trigger time is. Okay, sir. Your name?
Yeah, Vern Van.
Yeah.
Vern Van Winkle, 21st Century Video in Orange County. My question to you is that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in the area now, starting to make quite a bit of money, and it seems like getting ahead is becoming harder and harder because of the incumbents of taxes, and not only with just the federal government, but the local governments. To really get established and start making some money, it seems that they're taking more of it from me than I can really get ahead of. And it's like I'm always fighting to go beyond them. And it's really leading me into possibly a deceiving way of doing things and taking money outside the country or doing other things with the money once I get it. So how can you make money legally and put it away and be successful?
Well, I've never worried about taxes. I don't even know what tax bracket that I pay. the simple and the straightest and the most succinct and honest answer is you're not making enough money, you're not generating enough revenue. And you shouldn't worry. If you're preoccupied with paying taxes, then you're not spending enough time. By definition, that means that's taken away from time of generating revenue. If you don't like the tax rate in the city you live in, move. Move to Nevada. That's why people move to Nevada and Texas. There's no state taxes. And there's one other place, I forget. Well, there's a couple others, yeah. That's why a lot of the doofus personal development people live in Florida. You know, they don't make any money. They shouldn't worry about it. They don't make any money to pay taxes. I don't know why they worry so much, but I mean, a lot of them live in Florida. Now, I would focus not on how you can keep more of your income that you produce. I would focus on 100% of my time, or getting out 100%, a great deal of my effort on trying to generate more revenue. There's nothing you can do about taxes. I mean, they're going to go up and down depending on what administration's in or out. You know, and the important thing is revenue generating. If you were making 5 times as much money, generating 5 times as much revenue, you wouldn't be as concerned about the taxes you pay. You just wouldn't. And I've always, you know, I have a philosophy. I spend 110% of the income I make every year. And in some years, I mean, it's even more than that, because one of the key things, and I'm glad that you asked this question because it made me remember something that I've forgotten to mention. And it really validates why taxes are of so little importance. Fortunes, net worth are built on equity in deals, not income. Unless you're a rock star, a pedophile rock star, or you're Michael Jordan, you're never going to get rich off of income. I mean rich. Never. It's equity in transactions, equity in companies, equity in deals. Harvard lawyers, doctors, whatever. Never happened. Warren Christopher did not get rich being the managing partner of one of the most prestigious law firms in the world. He got rich with what he did with his money. That's why taxes don't mean spit. Important concept. And I almost let it slide by. Extremely important. You don't make money from the difference when 86,000 to 110,000 or 400,000 to 600,000 or $2 million to $3 million in income. You make money off of equity. My net worth is based on, and I've had, you know, multiple 7-figure, 8-figure income years. And I spend it. That castle isn't cheap. All the antiques and the artwork and all that stuff, I mean, costs a lot of money. My home in California costs a lot of money. My home in Texas, while I still had it, cost a ton of money. You know, I used to have, I've cut back because I'm kinder, gentler Dan now, but I used to have $30 million in houses. And there's a lot of overhead. Those maids and those little things wearing little white dresses running around, all that people cost money. And I spend it because I don't worry about it. Because I know I've made my money in equity. I'm not drawing any salaries out of any of these companies that I can think, that I know of anyway, that when I went to trial last August against my former company, we found hundreds of thousands of dollars in accounts I forgot I had. And they tried to prove to the jury, which didn't believe him, that Dan tried to defraud, you know, when I filed my financial statement. I found $77,000 in a checking account I forgot I had. Great Western Development checking account, as a matter of fact. Because that, I mean, that's not where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. It's not, you know, it's like, I don't carry business cards, because if you need a business card, then that means no, you don't know me. You either know me or you don't. I don't have business cards. Bunker Hunt says, how rich are you? I don't know. If you know how rich you are, not very rich, I guess. It's back to focusing on the minutia, the micro. And that's not where it's at. Quantum growth is on the macro level. It's on taking $60,000 option and turning it for $50 million in 4.5 months. Now, these companies that I'm starting, I may take them public on the Hong Kong exchange. I may go to Australia, figure out, you know, someplace there's a doofus that'll fund it. Even your doofus deals. There is a moron someplace, somewhere, that would even give one of you in this audience money. Huh? You got to go look for them. You got to kiss a lot of frogs. And at your age, you probably don't like kissing those pussy warts anymore. I've learned to like kissing pus. It's good. It's good for the complexion. That's why I have no wrinkles. It's important. It's an extremely important concept. You're not going to get rich. And I've tried to explain this to the seminar people, these doofuses that are out here giving you advice. It's not, nobody, no, first of all, none of these guys got any money to talk to you, for starters. Except for Ted Nicholas. For starters. And then they're teaching you how to make $15,000. They ought to be, what do you do when you make a $300,000 or $600,000? What do you do with it? That's what's important. Now, I say this in slightly tongue-in-cheek. Anybody can make income. It's what you do with it. Somebody, microphone. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. God, I hate you calling ma'am. It reminds me of my mom. My name is Isadora Dolan. I'm an executive recruiter, and I live in Cardiff by the Sea.
Oh, an airy fairy. Oh, that's lovely.
Neuropathic stress people live.
God.
I have a couple of questions. My
Sounds
first
fun.
is, I want to know how you spell doofus.
Nobody's
I have 2 or 3 spellings. I was wondering how you spell it.
Nobody's ever asked me that before. Let me think. Doofus, doofus,
Carefully.
D-U-F-U-S. D-U-F. Doofus.
Doofus. Okay, that's how I spell it.
Oh, no.
Okay, my next question is, how do you find the best advisors? Right now, I'm looking for an accountant. I'm looking for someone to guide me legally, and I'm making some inquiries, but I haven't really found this out.
Where are you looking?
I'm talking to other business people and saying, who do you
Are these, okay,
recommend?
let me stop you. Excuse me for interrupting. Are these people super successful?
I would say they're moderately successful.
You're talking to the wrong people then.
Super successful people.
Ask them their advice. Don't ask a doofus, you know, personal development guy that doesn't, you know, couldn't find his ass with both hands tied behind him. Ask somebody that's been there, done that.
Okay. My last question is balance, work and personal life. I live in Cardiff. I can ask this question.
You may be asking the wrong person.
I know, and I'm
This may be the first question I can't answer in the history of this seminar.
I want to know how you keep balance in your life.
I'm not so sure I've got much balance. I have more balance now that I've split my life up into a third. Third pro bono work, a third doing this, and a third running my businesses or overseeing my businesses. I work out of my house. I have an office in Los Angeles. I go to it maybe once a month. I have an office in Houston. I go to it once a year. I just was there the other day. And I have an office in Scotland, which I spend the 3 or 4 months during the summer there. I work out of my house because I see the kids more. And my son is getting pretty unbearable, and according to my wife. And so when I'm there, he's like a church mouse. And so I do that. And I take him on some of these trips. And he sat in on meetings. He sat in on me a couple meetings, or at least, with Ed Taylor. And I ask him because he's got, you know, so that's how I try to keep balance. But I still travel a lot. I mean, I still, you know, am gone quite a bit. I plan my scheduling around, my wife gives me the things that she says are absolutes. And there are no mandatories and absolutes in life, but in her judgment, absolutes that you got to go to this for the kid and this. And then I plan my whole schedule around that. But if business comes, or a doofus test, there's not many people that can give me the doofus test anymore. But I mean, if the doofus test comes, I'll drop that thing like a hot rock. And I'll go and I'll do the thing and do the business. and I'll apologize. You know, birthdays, I said this before, birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays are for poor people. That's a hard, hard thing to say, ladies and gentlemen. Are poor people. And that's not very Cardiff by the Sea. But it's the damn truth. I have missed, the reason my wife and I celebrate Friday the 13th, all Friday the 13th as our anniversary, is because of the 21 anniversaries, I've missed 16. So we celebrate all Friday the 13th. My children, the only reason I've never missed one of my son's birthdays, Dan Jr., is because he was born on January 1. And normally, I've never done a deal on January 1. August 6, my other son, of 11 years, I've missed 6. My daughter, who's 8 years old, September 26th, I've missed 7 of 8 birthdays. I can't tell you how many Christmases I've missed. I can't tell you how many other deals I've missed. I've flown there, been with them a day, and I've left. It's pay price to action. Either you want to suck up your pantyhose or you don't. No skin off my butt if you don't. I don't care. If I work with you, I care. You, like Burl said, you do it my way or the highway. And I'm not telling you leave your wife. Some of you will. Or leave your significant other. Some of you will. But when I say this is what we're doing vis-a-vis the business plan, you better do it that way. Because I don't associate with people that aren't winners. I make all my deals win one way or another. Burl made a good decision. That $1 million, I still remember drawing that circle around that $1 million, and I put it on a piece of paper and I shoved it to her. You maybe want that $1 million, Burl. No, maybe you want it. Back and forth. And I've done that. I've done that so many. I've done that dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And so I mean that's how I get the balance. And I have a few space cadet airy fairy friends. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dan. My name is Peter McDonough. I live right outside of Sarasota, Florida. I have a couple businesses I've been trying to grow internally. It's not been fast enough. And I had two separate questions. The first one is that for those of us who don't have a financial background, where can we look, not just for funding like a joint venture, but where can we get good information on how to take a company public?
Okay. Yeah, sure I do. I'm going to answer this in kind of a multifaceted way. Number one, if you have a high-performance lawyer that's with a good law firm, they will have internally people that know all those things. If you're dealing with a reasonably large accounting firm, they will have people internally. Most of you aren't dealing with reasonably large accounting firms and reasonably well thought of law firms. Most of you, not most of you, many of you are dealing with your brother-in-law or some doofus you went to school with and you feel obligated to do business with them. Some doofus Harvard lawyer that you went to school with maybe. Don't feel obligated to, You go to where the best advice that you can afford. I used to go to the best advice I couldn't afford. Because I always ran all the businesses I run like if they're going to be public someday. Then you don't have to worry. And I always, because I was considered a wild man in my youth in business, I always brought in strong people. And one of the things that if it wasn't implicit in what I said, is you want strong personalities. If you've got yes men and yes women around you, blow them out. That's it. The road. High performance people. I surrounded myself with people infinitely smarter than I, had infinitely better educations than I. They didn't love themselves as much as I did. There's a couple of them now. One of them is CEO of Great Western. He loves himself pretty good. Gary Lovelace, current CEO. Looks like a fat Elvis Presley, I used to tell him. Surround yourself with people. I used to say, if 3 or 4 or 5 of my men didn't want my job and weren't trying to cut my head off to get it, then I wasn't doing my job. So you go to the financial and to the accounting, the accounting and the legal profession. You can talk to investment bankers all day long, and it doesn't cost you any money. The good ones at a certain point in time will tell you, I mean, you know, are you going to do something or aren't you going to do something? There are boutique investment banking firms, which I'm not a proponent of. I like the big ones because if something goes wrong, you got somebody to sue. Something goes wrong with ABC Investment Banking in Sarasota, Florida, he doesn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. I always like somebody when things go wrong, because when things go wrong, they come after me. So I want somebody with bigger pockets to go after. When they're after me, I'm after them. Because things go wrong. Always. They always go wrong, no matter what the greatest of intentions are.
My other question is that if I was now looking to grow externally and wasn't necessarily looking for, that I had a jewelry store and wanted to buy a bigger jewelry store, should I look for businesses that may be in distress?
Oh, when I say that opportunity is where chaos is, and chaos is no bigger chaos than when a business is in distress. The couple of companies that I've gotten fairly close in the telecommunications were so much in distress they ultimately went out of business. I couldn't save them. Yes, distress sales. But I'm the kind of guy, see, I'll pay up if I know in my mind what I can do with the business. I'll pay up. I don't always, like most of you in this room, try to squeeze the last quarter out of a deal. It's like my theory on buying houses. You know, if I like the house, I'm not, you know, and if I like the house, a bunch of other people are going to like it, I just buy it. And if it's, and all of my houses, pretty much, except for the castle, worth less than I paid for them, I don't care. So what? I don't plan on moving. I'm just going to live in them. What the hell's the difference? Your cars are worth less after you buy them. Yeah. With the exception, I have a couple cars of mine are worth more than what I paid for them, but that's an exception. I have a Cobra. A new real Cobra, not a knockoff, a real Cobra that's worth a couple $300,000 more than I paid for it. But that's only because Shelby's now selling them for $500,000 or $600,000 in Southern California. I didn't know when I bought it he was going to do that. But it makes no difference. I still, you know, I've only got 1,600 miles on it, and I'm not doing that to save it to sell it to somebody. So that's how I would do it. Another question. Up here. Yes, sir.
Dan, my name is Jim Curtis. I'm from up around the San Francisco area. But just a question. If you were to start today, dead broke, and with a great idea, how would you go about raising OPM or getting OPM or even going on a Doofus patrol?
Okay. I answered this question. I'm going to share with you, those of you that didn't hear it last night. I was asked this on a panel, and I said I'd go in the personal development business because you don't have to know anything. You don't have to do anything, and you don't have to have any money. All you have to do is say you read 700 books or 300 books, and that's what I do. But that's, you know, I said that slightly tongue-in-cheek. I really didn't. It was the dead truth. Okay, what I would do, depending on the idea, but I'll give you some generic ideas. Number one, you don't go to your relatives. You don't go to your friends. Those are for starters. Okay. Which is just the opposite that most people, the advice you'll get. And the reason you don't is because then you can't handle the business relationship on a one-on-one business way. It automatically precludes you from doing that. And startup businesses are tough enough without being able to handle and deal with people on a one-on-one business manner as opposed to a personal manner. That's number one. Number two, again, depending on the area, I would go to who historically has funded projects in that area. I.e., when Apple Jobs got started, he went to Ross Perot and a few other guys, and they put up money. When Jobs got thrown out of Apple, and he started this new company, whatever it's called, Next. He went to Ross again. Ross kicked in $20 million. The Basses kicked in $20 or $50 million. I would go to who has a track record for those kind of deals. And I'm not talking about venture capitalists. I'm talking about individuals that have a track record for doing deals like that. And there's hundreds of people in the country, and it's in the news. If there's a newsletter or a news media for that industry, anybody that's given money or joint venturing in it is going to be written about. Go back for the last 3 years and look up who has. Hewlett-Packard used to give loan funding or provide capital for computer kind of stuff over 20 or 30 years. I don't know if they still do it anymore. So that's where I'd start. It's easier to go to somebody that's already knows how to do it and has done it, and his comfort level, he knows by definition some of the guys that he invests in or some of the ladies he invests in, you're going to lose money. Rather than re-educating some guy or some lady that has never done it before, and the first time you have a problem, they have a conniption. So you go where it's already been done. As soon as you get into that door, then you immediately, you've got a track record and you leverage off of that. You go to somebody else. Now you don't need somebody that's been doing it before, because now I've got ABC Company. They've been doing this 27 years. They've invested $400 million or $4 million, and they're my partner. The fact that they took 85% of the deal, unless this is going to be the only idea you ever come up with the rest of your life, and if that is, you just go jump out in front of a truck then. Let it run over you. And just a minute. Next, you go to accountants and lawyers that have been in that industry, that have a reputation of doing deals in that industry, and see how you can get them involved, taking a piece of the deal to do the work. Now, by the end of the day, you may wind up with very little of this deal, but the important thing is to get the deal done. Once you've gotten that, when you get that far, now you've got leverage to go out and either syndicate it, do a private placement, a bigger one, because you've got a big partner, you've got the legal representation, the accounting representation already involved, you've done not all the work, but most of the work, and then you go out and you can raise additional capital if that's what's needed. Most of the deals I see that are like the one this gentleman just alluded to, then they get the money and then they live off of it because they've quit their job and their deal is going south, and for 3 or 5 years they live off of it, and they don't do it on purpose. It's more of a sin of omission than commission. They don't tell their partner, the big partner, the me in the deal, what's really going on, because they always think they're going to be able to get money from somebody else, or they're always going to get that purchase order, or they're always going to get that contract, and then you're into the deal 3 or 4 or 5 years. And by the way, most venture capital deals take 7 years to turn around. From the time you invest your money to the time you get your money out, 7. And if you think any different, you're crazy. And if anybody's ever told you any different, they're crazy. They've never done it. 7 years. And then it becomes for a less than harmonious relationship, because a lot of the people live off the deals. Did that answer your question?
Pretty much so.
Okay. Mike? I know Ed thinks I should stop talking to you guys, but I'll answer some more questions because we're running a little ahead of time, which is highly unusual. Yes?
Yes, my name is Dan Gardner. I have 2 questions. One, do you have a checklist for starting up a business? And 2, for those of us who may not have a business or may be looking for a different business, do you have some ideas on where to find a business to start?
Well, let me answer the second question first. As I've already said, healthcare and telecommunications are wrought with chaos. Those are good. Those are recipes for success. As long as we have that, with the telecommunication highway, superhighway, and all that, there's just a lot of opportunities. The first part of your question again?
Checklist.
Oh, the checklist. No, I don't have a checklist. The Investigate Before You Invest book is a form of a checklist. The idea to execution, fruition, is an excellent checklist to use. Within, not at this seminar, but at the seminar that when I get in and we actually work through a business plan with you individually, the November program, we go through and actually walk you through the steps, and actually before you leave, you come up with a plan very much like we did at the castle, what you're going to do. I remember we had one PhD, a math PhD guy, who's the president of a software company. He had 32-page action list. Real tight, squinchy writing, 32-page action list he was going to go back and do. Fidel's action list was he was going to go and clean off his desk and throw everything in the trash can that he'd been saving for 6 years. So there is an action list, but it's actually a combination of 2 or 3 of the things we've talked about, plus some other things that we covered. Yes, sir. Pardon? Yes. What was the second question again?
What business would you go into?
Oh, telecommunication and healthcare. Those are the 2 industries that I would look at seriously. Telecommunication and healthcare. Because they're the ones that have the biggest problems, and where the biggest problems are the biggest rewards. Yes, sir.
Is this on?
Yeah.
My name is Rick Moore, and I own Dr. Reuter Special Services.
What does that do?
I'm a plumber, and I do in-pipe video. Anyway, what I've just recently found is a demand for training in the plumbing field, training films. Okay, what I would like to do is create a series of films, starting with the trade and then getting into how to start a service business. And the people or the person or the item that I would like to get to finance this would be the federal government. Now, how do I get the federal government excited and motivated about maybe sponsoring this film to help and this could be used in an inner city situation to help create some of these kids, get feelings of self-worth, which they do not.
Well, you're right about the lack of self-worth. Well, I would do it a different way. I would go to the city and get the city interested first, and if there's enough interest in the city, then you can get the federal government to do it. I would go to, again, not a large city. I would go to San Diego. I mean, it's about the right size. And I would see about them funding. I assume they have unemployed kids running around San Diego like they do every city, don't they? Okay, Laguna Beach. Is anybody unemployed in Laguna Beach?
They're all unemployed artists.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd go to a city that has that kind of problem. Okay, well, LA's, I think it's too big. I would go to I'd go to Long Beach. Long Beach. I'd go to Long Beach. I'd go to Baldwin Park. Go to Baldwin Park. Call Mayor Fidel Vargas. Okay, you go to Baldwin Park and you approach him with the idea. You do it on a pilot basis, a small basis. You test small and roll it out big, right? And that's what I'm serious. I'd go to Baldwin Park. Get Mayor Doofus to do something. He's one of the magnificent. He's the leader, the ringleader of the Magnificent Seven, huh? Oh no, yeah. Well, he was the first one. He's the senior most Magnificent Seven. Okay, there's no ringleader. We'll see how magnificent they are. Yes, sir.
And my name is Joe Sanfilippo, and I'm a president of a company called Franchise Works. We're a franchise development firm based here in Del Mar. And one of our clients is a bagel bakery chain called Skolnick's Bagel Bakeries.
Are they?
Franchise.
Okay.
I'm just curious about what you think about small businesses like that for entrepreneurs that are interested in going into their own business but can't afford or don't want to go into a big company.
You mean franchising?
Yeah.
I don't know much about franchising. I know there's real good franchises and there's real bad franchises. I believe very strongly this is a perfect example of investigate before. I mean, I do a lot of due diligence. One of the things I do is I'd go to find out if there's any litigation against these franchises. And some of the real good franchises hardly have any litigation. And that normally means it's because what they tell the person is what they give them. McDonald's is a good example of that, the McDonald's franchise. Some of the other franchises that are wrought with litigation, I'd be very suspect. No, I wouldn't be suspect. I'd just say, forget it. I mean, and you know, when I read through, and I don't read through, I leaf through some of these magazines, and as I told you, and I didn't mention it today, I know you read Entrepreneur, you read Inc. and all that stuff, and this is what you ought to be reading. I mean, the Robb Report, because this is where you want to be. These are people, and other than, I like them even now more. I've been saying this a lot of years because I started reading this in the middle 70s, because when I decided to buy an island, and a Rolls Royce at that time, and then ultimately an island and a castle, and they list islands and castles and stuff in the back of the book. That's what they sell. But ever since they wrote me up in May of '93 and said I was one of the 3 best personal development, which I'm not, guys in the country. I like him even more now. But that's not why, I mean, and I have no interest in Rob Report, but I mean, they don't talk about franchises in here. They do in all those other magazines that we talked about. It gets back to who you want to be is what you're going to become is who you hang around with. But no, I have no problem with franchises. Just make sure it's a good one. The question back there, right there.
I'm just curious, how did you formalize this Magnificent Seven group?
Yeah, I know that. I sense this. Well, there was one benchmark, really. You had to be a minority, Hispanic, because they're all Hispanic, even though some of them have Anglo names. At one time, you had to all go to Harvard, but then we made a couple of exceptions. They were high performance in their own right. All the Magnificent Seven are very successful. I tease about them, but I mean, in their own right, they're role models, easily. But I have a pet peeve with minorities, especially, that the role model ends with your education, and then we forget about them. Now, if I had been the youngest mayor in the United States, and I had gone to Harvard, and I was 23, I would have been on every major news program. I would have been on UPI, AP. I would have been on the front page of every magazine in this country. Yet, as smart as Fidel is, he in the Democratic Party, he's a Democrat on top of it. Clinton comes and calls him in to talk to him. You know, they let it drop in the toilet, basically. A tragedy. Yeah, well, that's funny. Well, I'm not going to get into that one. Okay, but I mean, and so I decided to take on these 7 guys because it's education, and one of them is a Baker Scholar. And for those of you who don't understand what a Baker Scholar is, he's the highest GPA or smartest guy to get out of Harvard or the business school. And he even sat in front of the Magnificent Seven and said, it doesn't mean spit. Because when you get out there in the real world, it doesn't mean spit. Nobody knows, cares, or wants to know that he was a Baker Scholar. And I've been saying that for 25 years. And the fact that one of the group actually said it. And I mean, and the people that are, you know, Harvard Law School is arguably the best law school in the country. I don't know if a guy from Stanford or Princeton or Yale would say that, but I know arguably it's one of the best, if not the very best. And it's what you do. And so I took on this Magnificent Seven to take them to the next level because our ethnic background isn't going to do that. All our ethnic background is going to do is pull them in the toilet with themselves. And that's why, and so far I've had a lot of fun. We've only had one big meeting. It'll be interesting to see if anybody follows up after that. But because my experience is other young role models, they get tied down to the fact that they're educational stars and not doing anything for the community. Because you can have all the Harvard MBAs you want, either black or brown, and if you don't do something with it, it doesn't mean spit. You might as well have gone to Pepperdine. No, Ed. No, Ed went to the School of Hard Knocks. Somebody else. Yes.
Okay. My name's Jack Cardoza, and I live in Rancho Santa Fe, just over the hill from
Mm-hmm. Another space cadet.
I have an idea to. Well, actually, I'm creating a company right now called Vietnam Tours, taking people to Vietnam on tours. And next year.
You gonna get any trigger time? I mean, what's the story?
Yeah, it's a bucket clip.
Oh. That's funny. I like that.
And
about to cut this part out. Okay.
Next year's the 20th year since the ending of the war, and I want to create a 20th year event/reunion/healing event, and for it to be healing and nurturing for the Vietnam people as well as the American people or the British people or the French people who were involved in wars there.
Mm-hmm.
And taking on an event of this size, I realize media is really important, but I'm a little, my feet feel like they're turning to clay when I start taking the first moves. and I'm wondering what input you might have on this.
Well, you haven't decided that to pay price to action. You haven't decided what you're willing to sacrifice, i.e. potentially failure. There's a lot of great ideas. There's not many people that make great ideas happen. It doesn't matter if it's a great idea. It can be a bad idea. It's the person that makes it happen. And that's natural. That's human nature. Doesn't make it right. It's the norm. It's the preconditioning that you've gone through for most of your life. And if you're wrong, I mean, you'll be wrong on big-time national TV wrong. And there's a difference between being wrong here or in an office and being wrong on Good Morning America with Rufus and Doofus, you know. And that's natural. But if you have this, you know, convictions are in concrete and you believe in it, and then you'll make it happen, and you'll take whatever risks, you'll do whatever it takes. One of my favorite talks is, do the ends justify the means? I love that talk, because you know what end of the continuum I'm at. And another talk I love is CEO Sets the Tone. And whatever it takes to get that done, if you're willing to do that, then the chances, the probabilities have increased geometrically, exponentially, that it will get done. If you're not willing to take those risks. And you know, we have two checking accounts in life, ladies and gentlemen. We have a financial checkbook and we have an emotional checkbook. Most of you in this room have more problems writing emotional checks than you do financial checks. Two checkbooks, emotional, financial. And the reason why you have trouble writing emotional checks is because it ties back to that, bless you, that concept, self-worth, what you feel about yourself. You can deplete both checkbooks. It's easier to replenish, for most people, the financial checkbook than the emotional checkbook. You've got to be willing to write not just emotional or financial checks, but also emotional checks. A couple more questions. Yes, the microphone.